All right. I have the honor and privilege of presenting our first speaker. The first time I saw this gentleman, I just accepted Christ in prison. I seen him on a television screen giving the gospel. Didn't know his name. He looked a lot younger than he does today. However, he is still on fire for the Lord in Jesus' name. I'm gonna let you guys hear him tell his story. However, I will say this. He is the co-founder of TPUSA Faith. The reason I'm up here, the reason Dina does what she does is because he listened to the Lord, him and Charlie Kirk, and because of that, we are sitting in this very room. Please clap it up for Rob McCoy.
Boomer, I left my walker. I had a great privilege of meeting your pastor, and I got to tell you, if you don't treat him right, I'm going to steal him. He's amazing. You've blessed me tremendously. Thank you. They were asking me what I was going to talk on, and I had no idea, and I usually don't know till a few minutes. And then when Dominic, and I was waiting for the Lord to tell me, and Dominic started singing, and then he shared some words about the kingdom. And the Lord put a verse on my heart, and I want to read it to you. This is out of Matthew 11. Assuredly, I say to you, among those born of women, there's not risen one greater than John the Baptist. But he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. And I like what a commentator who I appreciate greatly, David Guzik, wrote. He said, the kingdom will never be received passively. It is always founded on God's work on our behalf, but God's work will always produce a response in us. They are not lazy wishes or cold endeavors that will bring men to heaven. There's a misunderstanding in the body of Christ that Christianity is passive. It's not. Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. He said, this idea that the sword of the Spirit, the Word of God, it's sharper than a two-edged sword, able to divide the thoughts and the intents of the heart. It cuts to the marrow. It's that thing that reveals humanity. It's truth. And what's so powerful about truth, especially in the freest nation on the face of the earth, that if you know the truth will set you free. I'm almost 60 years old come August. Boomer saw me on TV when I was 18. He was in prison at 3. For murder, wasn't it? But in my lifetime, I would have never have envisioned the censorship that we've experienced. I have a lifetime ban on YouTube. That's an honor, by the way. I just want you to know that. The governor said that we couldn't meet in fellowship together, even though the scripture says in Hebrews, do not forsake fellowshipping with the saints. He said that abortion clinics were essential, and liquor stores were essential, and cannabis distributors were essential, but the church wasn't essential. And then I was told by pastors when I remained open that I didn't love my neighbor. And I turned to them and said, no, you don't love your neighbor. It comes at a cost to me when I keep the doors of the church open at $3,000 every time we open the doors of the church. We amass fines of over $300,000. I was brought before judges for two contempt charges, found guilty both times. They threatened to arrest me and cite me and 1,000 congregants or visitors. Forsaking the first 16 words of the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion nor for prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Strip clubs aren't covered by those first 16 words. Cannabis distributors are not covered by those first 16 words. Abortion clinics are not covered by those first 16 words. The church is. And I say this because abortion clinics are essential in California. We lead the nation in abortion. It was legal long before 1973 in California. And we don't just rip the baby apart and flush its parts into the sewer system of the state. We harvest their organs before we kill them. It's been estimated in California that we've aborted more children than the current population of Canada. And for those of you who ascribe to Black Lives Matter, and they do, my question to the churches that posted the banner, do you really love our black brothers and sisters? Because when Roe v. Wade was overturned, you said nothing. And the reason why I say this is because 6% of America's population, black childbearing females, are responsible for 40% of the abortions. The birth rate in the black community in America used to be 7.8%. Now it's 1.6. It's estimated that in 40 years you'll have to go to the Smithsonian Institute to see a black American. It's a Holocaust in the black community. Where is the voice for these voiceless? And I was educated on this by a dear friend, lifelong Democrat. I was a lifelong Republican. I was running for the state assembly. His name's Bishop Broderick Huggins. I sat down next to him when I was running for office at a pastor's gathering in Oxnard, which is plus 27 Democrat, and I was trying to do anything I could to get votes in that region. And they seated me next to him, and he didn't want anything to do with me. We began to talk and realized we had a lot in common. And I went and visited him at his church, and I brought him, I'm a beekeeper, and I had a hive at the time that I've since moved to another ranch because we moved to Phoenix. And I brought him some honey from my hive. And I invited him to come preach at our church. Oxnard's down in the basin. We're up on the hill. He said, "You're the first church that's ever invited me to come speak on the hill." I said, "Really?" He came and preached one of the most amazing sermons I've ever heard. His expository gifting and his hermeneutical approach is unequaled. And then he reciprocated and asked me to come and speak at his church, the largest black church in Ventura County. And I addressed their congregation by saying, your church and my church will have something in common after I finish preaching. You're both going to want Bishop Huggins back. And when I shared with him my frustration over abortion, he said, "Rob, in the black community, the only help we receive for these single moms is the government." He says, "Where are the churches that come in and help us with these single parents and the impoverished?" He says, "It's one thing to stand on your principles, but where is the application where compassion costs you something?" I understood that. And when I shared with him the statistics, he was shocked by that. And the two of us together grew a little bit. You see, that's how iron sharpens iron. I would joke with Bishop Huggins, I was raised in Coronado, California. My high school was 98.5% white. I was a marshmallow and milk. Bishop Huggins was raised in Stockton. And he jokes, he says, "I'm so black I get pulled over riding a motorcycle for tinted windows." And we're the two most unlikely people to be friends. His son was shot, I think, 19 times by Alameda sheriff. He was unarmed. I don't know what that's like. And as we began to spend time together, and I was a sheriff's chaplain, and then I served as the mayor of the city of Thousand Oaks. I was also on the council. Bishop Huggins and I became very, very close friends. You see, you start to understand the plagues of your community when you involve yourself. And when Bishop Huggins endorsed me in my run for the assembly, lifelong Democrat, endorsing a Republican in a plus 27 Democrat district, he was viciously attacked. What is wrong with America? The ad hominem attacks on my brother. And those who were his friends were silent. And as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I don't know what's worse, the voice of my enemies or the silence of my friends." I watched a good man get attacked, and he didn't waver, and he stood by me, and I've stood by him since. You see, we're contending for the lives of the voiceless. In California, you can now give hormone blockers. Excuse me, my voice is shot because I was yelling at a football game, Dominic. I was at a wedding. In California, you can now give hormone blockers to 15-year-olds. Hormone blockers that are considered inhumane for serial rapists in prison. Without parental permission, we can do that now. We can mutilate their bodies and feed their dysphoria, their psychological dysphoria. And we have pulpits in America professing that. We allow these young people's bodies to be mutilated. And if you take 100 biological males and you take 40 of them and you perform every surgery and give them every hormone blocker imaginable and put those 40 previously apparently from the crazy abandonment of truth, you put those 40 supposed females on an island with the other 60 males. And you come back in 100 years, you're going to find an island full of bones. You take 10 people, 6 of the males, 4 females, and put them on the same island and come back, you'll find it populated. Never, ever in the history of the world has a biological male ever given birth. And we remain silent while they mutilate our children. And in 20 years, they're going to wake up and say, where were you? Why didn't you say something? Oh, Pastor, I just preach the gospel. I don't do politics. Politics is dirty. Well, so is the church. What's your point? I mean, look at the room. Looks like the bar scene out of Star Wars. We're sinners saved by grace, amen? The only good thing in us is Jesus. If you have a problem with that, you got a pride issue. We'll try to help you get your head out the door. We're all beggars, showing other beggars where the food is. And the ground at the foot of the cross is level. And so, when we look at this idea that politics is dirty, and then the other response is, I'm tired of voting for the lesser of two evils. Unless Jesus Christ is running for office, you'll always be voting for the lesser of two evils. Quit making excuses for your apathy. And you say, well, where is it in the Bible? I'm glad you asked. Jesus was asked, what's the great commandment? He says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. And the second like it, love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments, hang all the law of the prophets. Love your neighbor as yourself. We had a 3rd commandment that couldn't be more effective at dismissing those commandments. We say, I just can't love others until I learn how to love myself. What are you talking about? Pastor, I don't love me. Yes, you do. No, I don't. I'm ugly. I hate myself. Listen, if you were ugly, you'd be happy that you were ugly. Do you understand? If you really hated yourself, you'd be happy you're ugly. I know that you have to put that in your pocket for later. It's a little mind-numbing. My point is, we want attention even if it's negative. We love ourselves. You get a family portrait. It's a good family portrait based on who looks? You. You wake up in the morning, who's the first person you take care of? You. We love ourselves, and the Lord is saying, the way you love yourself is the way you love your neighbor. Why is this critical? Well, the judge, when he brought me up on contempt charges, turned to my attorney and said, Counselor, will you remind your client of the 2nd great commandment? I had the judge invoking scripture. I thought, this is epic. I said, Judge, I don't need my counselor to help me with that. I can answer that for you. The 2nd commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. Judge, I love my neighbor. I love the elderly who have to die alone because of these draconian measures by the stupidity of what you've done. I love the 65% of the small business owners whose businesses will never reopen because of what you've done. I love the children whose schools have been shuttered when their death rate from this virus is 0.0002%. I love the young people where we've had suicide skyrocketing and drug abuse skyrocketing because of these draconian measures. I love the abused who've been quarantined with their abuser, Judge. I love my neighbor, and it's coming at a cost from you of $3,000 every time the doors of the church are open. I said, I don't need my attorney to answer that question. I love my neighbor. I was the mayor pro tem of the city of Thousand Oaks, the 13th largest city in California. On November 8th, 2018, about 7 days before I become the mayor of the city, there's a knock on the sliding door by our bedroom. No one ever knocks on that. It was frightening. I open it up as my daughter. Dad, I've been trying to get in touch with you. It was late. I said, what? She says, there's been a shooting at the borderline. And I looked at my phone. It was lighting up, city manager, chief of police, fire captain. We met down at the command center. The city was founded in 1964, the year I was born. This was the most seminal event in the history of our city. That night, 12 young people who were there for college night, and many were celebrating having survived the Route 99 shooting in Vegas. They survived it. A gunman came in and shot and killed 12 of our young people. 2 of them were from my congregation. The city is encircled by open space, and it caught fire, and the entire encirclement. It was a day from hell and lasted for 3 days. We had to evacuate the elderly and put them in evacuation centers. I was with every family throughout the evening because I was a sheriff's chaplain, and the other council members were happy that I remained. I was with them into the late morning when they were notified that their child was one of the victims. Throughout the night, I told them, prepare for the worst and pray for the best. You can't prepare for that. The guttural sounds and the screams of those family members when they found out their child had been murdered. When the gunmen began to fire, young people began to break the windows of the establishment and rabbit out. They cut themselves, gashes, blood everywhere. Scurrying to get to the exits, they dropped their phones. And when the FBI was investigating the crime scene, the entire floor was vibrating with phones of parents wondering if their children were safe. I officiated, as I said, 2 of those funerals. I was with every family member when they were notified. And then shortly after that, I became mayor of the city. 1 year to the day, we dedicated a park to the victims and to the survivors. I was beloved in the city. As a matter of fact, my opponent, when I ran for re-election, they pitted us together as though we were enemies. No one I run against and no one I'm opposed with is my enemy. People are not the enemy. They're the opportunity. Their ideology is the enemy. And they're as trapped in it as we know them to be. And how will they know unless someone speaks? Well, I can't speak because they're not going to like me. I'm sorry. Where is that in Scripture? They hated me, they're going to hate you also. A missionary goes where he's not loved but needed and leaves when he's no longer needed but loved. You suffer violence. They keyed my car. They broke windows. I had death threats. And I thought this woman hated me. And the night that we had the vigil after the shooting, I stood in the foyer of our Civic Arts Center and greeted every member of our community that came to the vigil that night. She saw me. She was with her husband. She came up to me. I didn't know what to expect. She began to weep and she grabbed me. And she was crying. And I held her. And her husband was crying. She backed up and she called me pastor. She said, Pastor McCoy, I wish you had been there when my daughter was murdered. I didn't know she'd had a child that was murdered. She said, what you said on the news the other night so encouraged me, and I'm so glad that you were where you are. We're not enemies, we're friends. I said, I've always felt that way. People said a pastor shouldn't be in office. That's exactly where a pastor should be. You say, well, that's dominionism. So you've been reading the left's talking points. Oh, that's Christian nationalism. Oh, you've been reading the left's talking points. What do you mean by Christian nationalism, by the way? What do you mean? You know what it is? It's an attempt that you are not permitted to express your convictions in the public square because you're a Christian. A nationalist simply means you have a love for your country. A Christian, and I'm glad they put it first, a Christian means you love Christ. Can you love two things at the same time? And for those of you who are married, I hope you're going to answer that correctly. If God didn't intend us to be in politics, he would have never had invented marriage. Aristotle said, politics is the highest form of community. It combines morality with sociability. How do we get along? What are the rules? In a community of fallen people with selfish natures, how do we get along? How do we do it? We have rules. Well, who writes those rules? You know, our founders were brilliant when it came to that. They searched all of history in the 6,000 years of recorded history to find a government. And by the way, the American Revolution was unlike any other revolution in the history of the world. Every revolution prior and following all operated for the purpose of the oligarchy, that the elite would look at humanity as saddles that they were permitted to ride. Our founders wanted a bottom-up form of government where they declared who the sovereign in our country was in the first three words of the preamble of our Constitution, we the people. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, do ordain and establish. And they gave us a Constitution, and I asked people, how many rights does the Constitution give us? And they try to tell me, and I go, no, the Constitution doesn't give us any rights. It's designed to protect us from those who would govern with our permission. It's power on loan. And they would be constrained by the 7 articles of the Constitution so they would never usurp our sovereignty. And when some candidate comes up and says, will you endorse me? I ask them one simple question. How many articles are in the Constitution, and please name them? And if they can't, I'd say, why in the world would I give you my endorsement when the document that is designed to protect me from you usurping my sovereignty, that you're going to swear to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and you don't know what's in it? If you're a police officer in here, or law enforcement, or you're in the military, you swore to defend that Constitution. Do you know what's in it? That's to protect our sovereignty. Law enforcement, you're sheepdogs. You protect the sheep. But a sheepdog has more in common with a wolf than it does with a sheep. And the only reason why a sheepdog is something that we're not to fear is because it's governed by the master. And if you don't understand that you are confined and constrained by those 7 articles, you'll turn on the sheep. Jesus said in Matthew 16, his disciples were traveling with him. And Jesus turned to them in Matthew 16, it's also in Mark 8. Jesus said to them, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And in Mark, he said, and beware of the leaven of Herod. The disciples said, what's he talking about? Did we not bring enough bread? And Jesus said, no. And they understood it later. And I had a pastor one time tell me, you know what the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees and of Herod are? And I admired this man. I thought him to be a wonderful blessing to my life. But in this instance, he was completely wrong. He said the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees and Herod is politics. I went, what are you talking about? He said, yes, Christians should only be about the gospel. Okay. That made no sense to me. And as I read the text more and I saw it in context, which is how you do an exegetical study, the immediate portion after that is Jesus takes his disciples up to Caesarea Philippi, which is the headwaters of the Jordan. Long walk for these Orthodox boys from Galilee. They'd probably never left that region before. And in Caesarea Philippi, it's the most resplendent park-like setting you can imagine. Every culture that's dominated the region has set up a temple to their god or goddess. I've been there 22 times. And up at the headwaters of the Jordan, Jesus turns to his disciples in the cacophony of noise of pagan worship. The Romans occupied the region. They were probably worshiping Bacchus, the god of alcohol, Aphrodite. There's probably drunken nudity. These Orthodox boys are going, whoa. In the cacophony of noise of pagan worship, Jesus turns to his disciples. He says, who do men say that I am? Well, some say you're Jeremiah. Some say you're John the Baptist. Some say you're Elijah. He says, who do you say that I am? And Peter chimes in. You're the Christ, the Son of the living God. You're the Messiah of the world. You're the Savior of the world. Jesus says, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And upon this rock, I will build my... No. Thank you. We say church. But that word didn't come till hundreds of years later. Jesus didn't use a religious term. He didn't say synagogue or temple. He deliberately used, and we look at the etymology of the word, and goes all the way back to Aristotle, ecclesia or ecclesia. You know what that word means in the Greek? I'll give you a hint. Tyndale, in the first English-speaking Bible translated from the original language, which is what we use and what you're holding in your hand, which is where we got the Geneva Bible, which is what our founders used. And in the Geneva Bible, in the commentary, were all of the commentaries on civil government, which is what they established the Mayflower Compact with. When he translated that word, for that one word, the king had him hung and his remains burned. He translated it, put your seatbelts on, because this is a reason to hang somebody. He translated it, not church, he translated it assembly. And that was not even as deep as he could have gone. The word, all the way back to Aristotle, the ecclesia was where the citizens of the city-state would gather to decide the welfare of their friends and neighbors by voting on those things that they had in agreement for their society. Translated, upon this rock I will build my public square. I'll go further. Upon this rock I'll build my city hall. Separation of church and state, Pastor, this is out of control. Could you give me one founding document where that is stated, a separation of church and state? One. Oh, the letter to the Danbury Baptist Convention by Jefferson. Have you read it? Because if that's what you're citing, you haven't read it. It is the complete opposite of what you say it to be. How do I separate my faith in Christ from my participation in the public square? What do I shelve my Christian beliefs? Christian nationalism is an attempt for the left to tell you, as a Christian, you have no right. And we buy it and we cower. And then we use their lingo to accuse one another. We devour each other. There's 65 to 85 million evangelical Christians in America. It's the worst voting bloc in America. Of the 65 to 85 million, half of them are registered to vote. And of the half that are registered to vote, only half of those vote in a presidential election and 11% in a non-presidential election. Now let me put that into context for you. Nothing violent, only being asked, as Paul emphasized his Roman citizenship, and yes, he was a Christian nationalist. He knew his Roman citizenship better than we know our own. And you have the ability to pull a lever to change the outcome, where the Bible says to have one of these little ones stumble, it'd be better for you to have a millstone tied around your neck and cast in the deepest ocean. But we use our excuses to avoid having to involve ourselves in the ecclesia. And if we just had a 5% increase in the registration and participation of the Christian community, there would be no transgender bills in California. The sexual education curriculum is so vile, you can't read a page of it in church. And those kids, if we as Christians do not respond, how will they know unless someone tells them? How will they know the truth unless we proclaim it? Those kids are going to come to us in 20 years and say, where were you when they mutilated my body? Half my generation is gone. It's been wiped out. Maybe the cure to cancer was within one of those little babies. You say, oh, it's on a baby. It's not? Says who? Why isn't that a human being? It's too small. Oh, so you're saying a small person is less valuable than a larger person? Well, no, it's its level of development. It's not fully developed. Oh, so an adolescent is less valuable than a fully grown adult? Well, no, it's its environment. It's in the woman. Oh, so I'm less valuable here in Livermore than I am in Thousand Oaks? Their strongest argument is degree of dependency. It's dependent on its mother to live. Okay. So somebody in here who's dependent on insulin or oxygen is less valuable. So we get to kill you? When you're washing dishes at the sink and you're looking out the window, whatever view you have, and your child comes up from behind you and says, Mommy, Daddy, can I kill this? Your back is to them. What's the first thing out of your mouth? What is it? It's a cockroach. Step on it, child. It's my little brother. Whoa, wait a minute. The question is, what is it? And it requires education. It requires more than a bumper sticker statement. And you know what? It's not a popular position. But let me tell you something. It wasn't Hitler and his victims. In 1933, Nazi Germany, there were 17,000 evangelical ministers. 3,000 of them stood in opposition to Hitler. 3,000 of them were completely embraced to Hitler and the nationalistic agenda. And 11,000 were the jelly in the middle. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer stood and Hitler said, look, I'm going to take care of your churches and your pensions. And Bonhoeffer said, I don't care about the church or my pension. I'm concerned with the soul of Germany. And Hitler said, leave that to me. And the pastors were afraid of the conflict. And so they moved away, because pastors have the misconception that peace is the absence of conflict. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of Christ in the midst of the conflict. Okay. And there was one man over on the Nazi side. His name was Martin Niemöller. He had been a U-boat captain in the First World War. And he thought Bonhoeffer was out of his mind. And then he started to see in 1933, as Hitler was rising to power in the burning of the Reichstag and his control of the churches, which is the last vestige in America that hasn't been completely infiltrated. And as he began to witness this nation that was responsible for the Protestant Reformation of Martin Luther, the furtherance of the gospel, you have your heritage from Germany as you sit in this congregation. And the nation that was responsible for the Reformation from 1933 to 1940, 7 years. So much so that the most erudite, brilliant member of parliament, Winston Churchill, was relegated to the backbench of parliament because he said, we have cut defense spending and we're not in preparation for the rise of Nazi Germany. He will take over all of your. They laughed at him. They mocked him. Peter Drucker said, and this is a fascinating quote, he said, the important thing is to identify the future that has already happened. The difference between the surface confidence that glumps along with a herd and the deep wisdom that sees what is already happening before anyone else does. When is somebody going to wake up and say, a man can never be a woman? Why must we go along like a herd? Man. Ha! Man. Don't bother me. When is somebody going to stand in defense of these? I haven't seen the calendar, so don't judge me. But there was a calendar of conservative women posing in swimsuits. And the outrage in the Christian community. Outrage. You know what that is? That's moral pietism. Where's the outrage? Listen, you're outraged at the exposure of too much femininity, while at the same time you're silent at the theft of their femininity by men posing as women. Where is that? Riley Gaines had to stand below, even though she tied a biological male who was a terrible male swimmer. And I told Riley her event was my event. I would have beaten her if I just dressed up as a woman. And she tied him. And they gave him the trophy. They had to endure, and putting on those female swimsuits takes a minimum of 30 minutes. They're race suits. And he dressed with them in that locker room. They had to endure that. Nobody said anything. Where are the feminists? What is a woman? What is a woman? And where are the adults in the room? Where? I'm sorry? Thank you, friend. We okay? How much time? 1 minute? All right. All right, I'll close with this. It'll be my first of 8 closings. I'll close with this. Our responsibility to this next generation is critical. Christianity as we know it is under massive attack. If you want to be the jelly in the middle and watch a nation like Germany that was once the hotbed of the Reformation then become a killing machine and gas and incinerate 6.5 million Jews and be responsible for the death of 50 million people, all you need to do is just remain silent. And by the way, silence in the face of evil is complicit with evil itself. And let tyranny run amok over those that you're to love as your neighbor more than yourself. You can live monastically while all of your neighbors are enslaved by tyranny, because you have your get out of hell free card. And by the way, use your eschatology to justify your apathy, because it's a tertiary theological position. And take offense instead of unifying with the body of Christ. Listen, if we don't get liberty right, we're going to be arguing our theological differences from prison. And this is the point. And this is critical. The difference between morality and character, and I close with this. Morality is not doing what's wrong. Don't drink, smoke, chew, hang around with those who do. Morality is not doing what's wrong. Character is doing what's right. So if your child comes home from school and says, Mommy, Daddy, all the kids in the school called Susie fat, but I didn't. You say, well, that's a moral thing to do, child. But where's your character? What do you mean? Why didn't you tell the other children to stop it? It wasn't Hitler and his minions. It was Hitler and a complicit nation that lied to each other because they were afraid of the consequences of truth. Are you afraid of the consequences of truth? Don't answer. I'm going to ask you a question. Did you take the shot because you believed in its efficacy, or because you didn't want to lose your job or you wanted to visit your grandkids? Leave it at that. If it's the second, the fear of man, is a snare. We're Christians. We're more than conquerors in Christ Jesus. Amen? All right, it's my turn. I get to do this. I'm very excited. Brigitte Gabriel is a hero of mine. I don't have her bio here, so I'm going to try to remember it. She won't be upset with me. Brigitte, from the age of 10 to the age of 17, spent her life in a bomb shelter. She's got scars from shrapnel with what had happened in her home, her birth nation of Lebanon. She grew up with a disdain for Jews from the propaganda that she'd absorbed, but what saved her life when they were about to create an attack on the Christian community in Lebanon was the Israeli invasion. She has come to stand in opposition to extremist Islam, and for that, she has what I consider a badge of honor. She's despised by the Southern Poverty Law Center. She's the founder and chairman of Act for America, which is phenomenal. She is a remarkable speaker. She's on the New York Times bestseller list, and she's tiny when you see her stand, but she's like Seabiscuit. She's tiny, but she's mighty. She's like concentrated orange juice. She's just effective. And another hero is Greg. A man who can live with nuclear energy and not be burned is amazing. Please welcome my dear friend, Brigitte Gabriel. Come on up, dear.
Oh, thank you. You're awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Woo! What a great event! Thank you. Thank you. I love you too. Isn't it great? This is what America is all about, God and country. And every single person of you here tonight represents God and country. And what a great event when we all can come together and gather and worship and pray and rejoice and enjoy our patriotism and be proud to be Americans. Proud to be Americans and not apologize for this country, because last time I checked, it's still the greatest country on the face of the planet. You know, people tell me all the time, Brigitte, don't you get depressed? You talk about terrorism and national security all the time, and you talk about the bad guys, and you're always fighting all these nasty people on the internet. And I tell them, of course I get depressed. I'm like everybody else. I'm human. Of course I get hurt when I read things, that people say about me. But what keeps me so energized is when I travel our amazing country and I meet wonderful patriots like you who take the time out of their busy schedule to come here tonight and hear me speak. So together we can gather together to figure out what we can do to save our nation and preserve our freedom. You are truly the wind beneath my wings. You are the ones who give me the energy to keep on going. Because as long as I know that there are people like you with the fire in your belly to fight and to stand up for what I'm standing up for, our country, our freedom, our faith, our Judeo-Christian values, our America, founded on Judeo-Christian values, I can continue fighting. So I want to thank you for honoring me with your presence tonight. Thank you. So as you can see, I'm very passionate. People tell me all the time, Brigitte, this passion, my gosh, you are so passionate. Where does this passion come from? And I tell them, in order for you to understand where my passion comes from, you have to understand my background. And for those of you who do not know much about my background, other than what Pastor McCoy mentioned, allow me to share with you a 5-minute crunch down of my life. You see, I was born and raised in what used to be Paris of the Middle East, a country called Lebanon, which used to be majority Christian country. Most people don't know that. The Christians were almost 70% of the country. Lebanon is a republic exactly like the United States of America. We elect our representatives. You know, it's very different than all the rest of the countries in the Middle East. In the Middle East, there are two countries that are democratic, Lebanon and Israel. In a sea of Arabic countries, which I call tribes with flags, because you can identify every country by one royal family or one regime, except for Israel and Lebanon. So I was raised into privileged. I was an only child to elderly parents who were married for over 22 years. They could not have any children. And finally, they are older. They are on the verge of retirement. My mother thought the train has passed. It's over. I'm never going to have a child. She goes to the doctor. She thinks she has cancer. Her stomach is getting harder. And the doctor tells her, you're going to have a baby. My mother was 55 years old when I came into the family. My father was 60. A true miracle in their lives. So don't let that gray hair fool you, you know, I'm the proof. So I grew up in privilege. You know, Lebanon we were open-minded, we were fair, we were tolerant, we were multicultural. We prided ourselves on our multiculturalism. We all had open borders. Does that sound familiar so far? We had open borders. Everybody came into our country because they wanted to study in our country, because we had built the best universities in the Middle East. They graduated and worked in our economy because we had built the best economy in the Middle East, even though we did not have any oil. Beirut became Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. Unfortunately, all that began to change when we imported people into our country who did not share our values. And when they came in and they started saying how they want to transform our country, how much they hate us, how they want to change our country, we didn't believe them. We thought, that's just a crazy few minority. They don't really mean it. We refused to read the writing on the wall. My 9/11 happened to me in 1975 when radical Islamic terrorists, ironically Palestinian radical Islamic terrorists, blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in a hospital bed, I would ask my father, you know, going from one surgery to another, hooked up to IVs in both arms, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, they consider us infidels and they want to kill us. So I learned since I was a 10-year-old little girl that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town. I ended up leaving the hospital and coming back home, but my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living in an underground bomb shelter in 8-by-10 room without electricity, without water, and very little food. And that's where I lived for the next 7 years of my life, from the age of 10 till the age of 17, robbed of my youth. In the beginning of the war, my father would say, all the Christian nations in the world are going to see what the Palestinians, what the Islamists are doing to the Christians in Lebanon. All the massacres, all the killing, all the slaughter, all the just like the horrific attack that happened on October 7th in Israel, the same type of massacres. And my father would say, America's going to come. England is going to come. Australia's going to come. All these big Christian nations are going to come protect the Christians in Lebanon. And we waited and nobody came. And after 3 years of living in the bomb shelter, I remember one night, I was 13 years old, and a friend of ours stopped by. And he said, I just want you to know that we heard a lot of chatter on the radios, and we believe we're going to be attacked tonight. And if I don't see you tomorrow, I wish you a merciful death. And he left. And I remember at the age of 13, dressing in my Sunday best, my Easter dress, because I wanted to look pretty when I am dead, knowing that when they come to slaughter me, there would be no one to bury me. And I remember sobbing as my mother combed my long black hair down to my hips and tied a white ribbon in my hair that matched the white flowers in my blue dress as I sobbed. I don't want to die. I'm only 13 years old. Please do something. I don't want to die. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we sat in the corner of our bomb shelter. And my father opened up the Bible and started reading from Psalms. I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil, for thou art with me. And my parents said to me, when they come to slaughter us tonight, we will create a distraction. We are old, we lived a long life, you are a young child. We'll create a distraction, and we want you to run towards Israel and don't look back. We lived 5 kilometers from the Israeli borders. And we knew if we go to the Jews and beg for help, the Jews are not going to slaughter us because we had more shared values with them than we had with the Muslims. Because remember, we are Christians, contrary to what Pastor McCoy said. I never hated the Jews because I came from a Christian home. The Muslims hated the Jews. And thank God I did not have to make that decision that night by leaving my parents and running to Israel. Because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and established the security zone and set up artillery bases on the hills surrounding our towns to keep the Palestinians and the Islamists away from our town. And that's how we survived for another 5 years until Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982, working with the Christians, trying to help the Christians take back their democracy and kick out the radical Islamic element that had taken control of the country at that time. Because by that time, we had 11 Islamic terrorist organizations operating out of Lebanon, including the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. That's how we came out of the bomb shelter and back to rebuilding our lives. I ended up moving to Israel in 1984 and becoming a news anchor for World News in the Middle East, covering world events. And I was reading the news. This was between 1984 till 1989, when we started seeing a true rise of radical Islamic terrorism worldwide. And as I read the news night after night, I started realizing there was a pattern developing. Because no matter where the terrorist activity was perpetrated, the name of the attackers were always Islamic. The name of the victims were always Christians. Terry Wade, Terry Anderson, Colonel Higgins, the Achille Laura, the TWA, the Pan Am flights. And I can go on and on and on and on. And I started realizing that what I used to think was a regional problem between a majority Islamic Middle East trying to either kill or expel the minority Christians and Jews had become a worldwide problem, but the world was not paying attention. The world was not connecting the dots. And isn't this exactly what the 9/11 Commission report told us? We lacked imagination. It's not that we did not know what our enemy wanted to do to us. Our enemy told us exactly what they wanted to do to us. Not just they tell us what they want to do to us, they post about it on social media, they put out press releases about it and send it to Al Jazeera so it can air worldwide. The enemy, your enemy, always tells you what they want to do to you. We bury our head in the sand, refusing to accept reality. Antifa tells us how much they hate us, what they want to do to the country. Obama told us what he wanted to do to the country. Black Lives Matter tell us what they want to do to the country. The illegal criminal aliens breaking the law to break into our country tell us exactly why they're coming here and what they want to do to our country. We are ignoring them and pretending, oh my goodness, how did this happen? I ended up coming to the United States in 1989 by marriage. And I ended up coming here and I thought I left all the crazies behind. I'm in America. I'm going to live the American dream. I'm going to become a multimillionaire by the age of 35 years old and retire. Because in America, supposedly, everybody had a tree that makes dollars in their backyard. And I thought, this is it. I made it to Nirvana. So I came to America on the TWA in April 29th, 1989. And I landed and I kissed the ground because I thought I made it to heaven. And I did. America is the greatest country in the world. I started a TV production company, an advertising agency. My clients were Oprah, Dr. Phil, Inside Edition, Good Morning America, 2020, all the big shows. I was working 6 months out of the year and enjoying the American dream, the other 6 months playing with my children. I have 2 daughters. And life was great until 9/11/2001. You know, it's amazing. Something always happens in our life. You know about defining moment. We all have defining moments in our lives. You would be walking regular day, whatever going on through life, and boom, something happens and you realize today is my defining moment. 9/11/2001 was a defining moment for the United States. 9/11, we changed the way we live. We changed the way we travel. We changed the way we bank. We changed the way we finance. 9/11, we all did the same thing. If you were anywhere near a television set, you were glued to the TV. You couldn't get enough news. You wanted to see what was happening. We all did the same thing. We all felt the same way. We were brokenhearted. We were devastated. We were depressed. We were in shock. We could not believe somebody could hate us so much that they would hijack airliners and fly them into skyscrapers with the sole intention of killing tens of thousands of people just because they hate us. We couldn't accept it. My daughters came home from school that day. And my youngest daughter, speaking of defining moments, 9/11 was a defining moment for the United States. But for me personally, it was a defining moment that changed the course of my life. My 2 daughters came home from school that day. My youngest daughter was around 10 years old, and they didn't tell them what happened at school. And they came home, and my younger daughter, like me, watching television, wondering what on earth is happening. She said to me, "Mommy, why did they do this to us?" She asked me the same question I asked my father when I was around her age. And I had to look into my daughter's eyes and say to her, they hate us, they consider us infidels, and they want to kill us. Here we were 2 generations apart. I was a young Lebanese girl. She's a young American girl. I spoke Arabic. She spoke English. 8,000 miles apart, 2 continents apart, 30 years apart. And I had to look into my daughter's eyes and repeat to her the same words my father said to me. That day was my defining moment. That day I vowed that I will do everything I can to make sure that my daughter will never ever look into her child's eyes and repeat to him or to her yet unborn what my daddy said to me and what I had to say to her. That day I was reborn as an activist. I laid in my bed. 9/11 happened on a Tuesday morning. I laid, not in the bed, in the family couch, in the family room, watching television from Tuesday till Sunday, utterly devastated, completely brokenhearted. When I would watch the images of the smoke, I can smell the smoke, the powder of the bomb. I know exactly how that smells like. When I would hear watch parents yelling for their loved ones on 9/11, I knew exactly. I could hear my parents' voice yelling my name as I was pinned under a wall. And I started praying, God, what can I do? How can I make a difference? Give me something to do. I knew I needed to do something. You see, I'm a firm believer that every single one of us sitting in this room tonight has a purpose in life. We all have a purpose. We all have a destiny. Most people live a lifetime without ever recognizing their destiny. I was fortunate enough that I recognized my destiny very early on. And today I want to talk to you about purpose. Because I believe that no matter what we go through in life, no matter what trials and tribulation, no matter what hardship, they say what doesn't break you makes you stronger. Every single thing we go through in life is nothing more but preparation so we can be used as instruments in God's hand to make a difference in this world. We are His instruments. God doesn't change the world through lightning in the sky. God uses His people as His instruments of change. And we are the servants who need to answer the call. God is very clear. God tells us where He wants us to go and what He needs us to do. But we have a choice. God never demands of us to do something. He gives us something, an idea for our consideration. It's up to us whether or not we can understand God's voice and obey the call. Every single one of us has a purpose in life. And people tell me, oh, Brigitte, but I'm a Christian. I'm not an activist. I just pray. I read my Bible in the morning and I pray. And I tell them, Jesus defined activism. Jesus was the first activist. When Jesus saw something wrong in that temple, He walked into that temple. He overthrew the table. He said, not in my Father's house. Jesus didn't sit in the corner with His tail between His legs saying, oh, Father, Daddy, I'm going to pray a little bit, but I'm embarrassed. I don't want them to hate me in this room. I don't want the town to talk about me, He didn't do that. It takes boldness. It takes courage. To whom much is given, much is required. You have seen the light. You have read the Bible. You understand your duty as a Christian and what you need to do. In my case, I sat and prayed from Tuesday to Sunday, saying, God, what can I do? And it became very clear to me. I needed to start traveling and speaking and mobilize millions of Americans to understand the threat to our national security and world peace and why we need to be engaged. And I started traveling and I started speaking. I realized I'm somebody who comes from the media. I can speak in sound bites. I'm fluent in 4 languages, Arabic, French, English, and Hebrew. I can talk to the press, I'm a writer, and I can communicate with people. I love talking to people. I think somebody asked me yesterday, they said, what's the largest crowd you spoke in front of, like in person? I said, 18,000 live. These are seats, other than when I would do things on the internet. On the internet, 2 million one time watched me do something. So I know the power of communicating with people. And I started traveling and speaking and communicating, and I realized this is what I want to do. I want to mobilize Americans to understand the threat and why they need to stand up and defend our country. So I started traveling and I started speaking from 2002 till 2006. I wrote New York Times bestseller about it. And I realized very quickly we can educate until the cows come home. Nothing is going to change. Education is important, but education without action is insufficient. Education must be coupled with action. And that's when I started Act for America. And Act for America today, I'm proud to tell you that an organization that I started out of my guest bedroom today has 2 million members nationwide, has helped pass 240 bills on the federal level and the state level. Thank you very much. So why today I want to talk to you about activism. Activism is far more important than education. You see, we on the right feel we need to be educated about an issue and educated, and we need to attend this conference and that conference and hear this lecture and that lecture. Our idea of activism is going to conferences, attending meetings, going to the Republican lunch once a month, eating the rubber chicken, socializing, hearing a great speaker, right? I'm right. Hearing a great speaker, and then the people who worked very hard to bring the speaker pat themselves in the back. Oh my gosh, we had a great meeting. What speaker we're going to bring next month? That's our idea of activism on the right. You talk to somebody on the left, so we are educated beyond our ability to think. Can you name me? You talk to any socialist nitwit, 22-year-old socialist nitwit. Tell me about socialism. Why are you a socialist? They can't even tell you. But by golly, are they active? Are they engaged? Do they call their elected officials? Do they impact policy? It's amazing. They are active, and that's what it takes. Activism. It's not about entertainment. It's not about hearing a speaker. Because tonight, before you leave here, if you don't take action on the action steps I'm going to tell you, you might as well be watching Dancing with the Stars. People tell me, Brigitte, but we are educated about the issue. Educated about the issue. Now, I'm talking to a group who's very educated right here, and they hear speakers, and they are very engaged. Now, can you name me the name of Obama's organization? Remember, Obama changed the way, transformed our country, Mr. Community Organizer, remember? Okay, he said, I want to transform America, we're going to change America, and he did. His organization was so famous because it transformed our country. Can you tell me the name of his organization? No? No? Now, I'm talking to a very educated crowd here. No, Obamacare is the health care. I'll help you out. Now, you would think Obama, the name of Obama's organization should be on the tip of every single conservative, America-loving person in this country. Definitely the conservative Republicans. Organizing for Action, OFA. Does it get any simpler than that? Organizing for Action. Now, Organizing for Action after Obama left morphed and became something much bigger than Obama's grassroots organization that today has 6,000 chapters nationwide. 6,000. They have 51 chapters within a 35-minute drive of this church right here where I'm standing. I already counted them. 51 chapters. 6,000 chapters nationwide. What's the name of that organization? You got it. You got it. Indivisible. Now, I have to tell you, I speak to tens of thousands of people. He is the second person to know the name of that organization out of all the people and all the tens of thousands that I spoke to. The other person was a young Russian Jewish man at the Lincoln Club, 30-year-old in Orange County, California. Indivisible. How many of you knew of Indivisible? Indivisible. Now, if you can pull up, please, Indivisible. I want them to see it. I want to show you what they have. Right around you. These people fight everything you stand for. Everything you are standing for. I could have brought it up from my computer. Here it is. Indivisible. Defeat MAGA, save democracy. Very simple. They don't say a lot of words. They go straight to the point. Now, when you go down, if you say find your group, you're going to go down to find your group. Right there, here's their map. Join a group today. Search for your group. We're going to put in the zip code. Here's the zip code, and you're going to have all the groups pop up right here. And you start scrolling down. I did the work for you already. 51 groups around you, fighting everything you stand for. Everything. Now, our problem on the right is we do not know thy enemy. What does General Sue said? Know thy enemy. We educate, we hear speakers, we listen to lectures, we go to conferences, laser and light show, everybody jumps up and down. Oh my gosh, Brigitte, I went to CPAC and it was unbelievable. And we heard Don Jr. speak and Janine Pierre speak and Tommy Lahren speak and I got my picture taken with so-and-so and this and that and such and such. And everybody is on a high and everybody goes home 7 days later and they have no idea what to do. Right? No idea what to do. They have great education, but they have no idea what to do. Can you give me one conference on the left that does what we do on the right? Welcome. No, they don't have them. That's why you can't name me one. They don't do conferences. They're not blowing $15 million on a conference. They take $1 million and they say, I'm going to go to liver, what are we in? That's it. Livermore, as you can tell, I travel a lot, right? Okay, so I'm in Livermore tonight. They can say, okay, we're going to take $1 million. We're going to dump it in this area. We're going to hire community directors. We're going to hire a neighborhood director in every neighborhood. We're going to map how many neighborhoods are there. We're going to hire a neighborhood director for $2,500 a month. He or her job are going to go to walk around, knock on their neighbors' doors, talk to their neighbors, invite them to a community picnic, get to know them, register them to vote, get them engaged politically, and that's how they organize. They're not going to conferences. Conferences are entertainment events. They're wonderful. They're a great support group, but you need to understand what they are. So that's indivisible. So how do we fight indivisible? And that's where we come in, because we are the ones who fight these people on the ground, except we fight for our Judeo-Christian values and freedom. And please pull up Act for America. Thank you. So how do we fight them? Act for America has chapters nationwide. What we do is we monitor bills. If you go on Act for America, we monitor bills coming down for a vote, and you will be able to see the numbers. We have so far have passed 245 bills in Congress, as well as on the state level. We have created a tool called Act Now, where we monitor the bills coming down for a vote in Congress as well as on the state. We send you an email and we say, this bill is coming down this week or next week. You need to contact your elected official about it. So one, we notify you about things to take action on before they happen. As you can see, 177,758,536 actions have been taken through our website. That's how we are able to pass the bills. So I want you to go down and I want to show you how this works. So we have Act Now National, Act Now State, and then major campaigns. If you go on Act Now on the top, okay, click on the Act Now National, please. Okay, Act Now National. Now I want you to scroll down. I want to give you an example. Can you please click on U.S. citizen required for running elections? We did this action alert after your state, California, decided to get somebody who's not a U.S. citizen to be voted on the election board. So we issued an action alert saying a non-citizen Chinese national was elected to the San Francisco Election Commission. We do not want this to happen. We tell people, here's what's happening. We are now launching a nationwide campaign to remove her and make sure every other state does not do that. So you click on Take Action Now. A screen pops up where you enter your information. Raul back there already entered his information. You click Submit. Once you enter your information, the computer will remember you. And then we'll give you the pictures and names of every single elected official in your state. We did this because of San Francisco, but we targeted nationwide all our governors, as well as your governor, your senators, and even down all the way to the Board of Supervisors. If you scroll down, look at this. I know you're not seeing the full screen. We did the work for you because most of you don't even know who these elected officials are. By the way, the computer is still loading with pictures. Look at them. There is no way you can know all your elected officials in California. We do the work for you. We give you your elected officials. See all the supervisors on the bottom? You go down to the bottom, you click confirm. Yes, these are my elected officials. You click confirm, the button on the red on the bottom, and then another page pops up with an email already written for you, so you can email them. Stop the San Francisco election security threat, because this is a threat for the whole country. The email is already written for you. The problem why people don't email their elected officials is because they don't know what to write. They don't have the time. They don't know how to write it. They feel stupid. Oh my gosh, am I going to look like a stupid person in front of my congressman or elected official? We write the email for you about the bill, what the bill is about and what we want. You go to the bottom. It's already signed in your name. Thank you, because remember, Raul signed it. You click. Can we move the screen? Can we move the cursor a little bit so we can see the full screen up here, because we're not seeing it? Here you go. Okay, now you scroll down, see already a petition, confirm. You go down to the bottom, there's a red button that says confirm. You click it, and then it goes to, see, this is a challenge of technology. I'm talking to two people in the back who are trying to, here we go. And then a Facebook post pops up. You can post it on your Facebook and tag all your friends so your elected officials can see it as well. So they no longer can say, oh, we do not know what you're doing. If you don't have Facebook, you skip it, you go to Twitter. Here's Twitter. We already have the tweets prepared for you. You don't have Twitter, you click skip. Then you go to their phone numbers. We give you their phone numbers. Every single elected official you have with a phone script, suggested call script. I'm appalled and alarmed at the recent decision by the San Francisco board. and you literally read off the screen a small script paragraph that you can say to them. That's how you make an impact. This is action, and we made it so easy for you. You can take actions like this on anything. This process takes 30 seconds, other than making the phone calls, because obviously you're going to be calling people. But if you don't feel comfortable calling, send them an email. We do this on so many issues. We have an action alert. Go to the Act Now National. You can see all the Act Now campaigns on the Act Now National, like Stop the Invasion. Okay, here's one. Click on Stop the Invasion. Anyone, stand with Israel. Stop Palestinian refugees from entering the United States. They now want to bring Palestinian refugees to the United States. And we have a petition that's already been signed by 1,907,855 actions on that Act Now campaign. Okay, now we're going to do it fast. Click on Take Action Now. Here's their name. Okay, it's already pre-populated. Submit. Click Submit. Email them. Click Submit. Click Confirm on the bottom, because we're sending it to all elected officials. Here's the email already written with Raul's signature. Click Submit. Here's the petition. Okay, click Submit. Here's Facebook. Let's skip Facebook because he doesn't want to open it. Here's tweet. Tweet at them. One click. Call them. How many seconds did it take? Even if you have 2 jobs and you have a bathroom break, you can do that in your bathroom break, okay? There is no excuse for people not to be taking action. No excuse. We made it so easy for you to take action. This is how you impact policy. This is how you impact policy. This is how you take back your country. We have action alerts about parental rights in education. In every state, we have bill introduced like this that's been signed by over 22 million people. Add your name. The number one thing you need to do as soon as you leave here tonight, you need to sign up for our emails and action alerts. And if we have the barcode right now, you can put it behind me, the barcode that we had emailed earlier to you guys, so you can flash it on the screen, so people can sign up to receive our emails and action alerts. They are free. They don't cost you anything. We want to make sure we are able to reach you when there is a bill coming down for a vote, whether in California or whether on the national level, so you can add your voice and take action and make it happen. And forward the action alerts to all your friends. This is how we take back our country. I can stand here and give you a lecture about this and that, and can you believe, and this is where they stand on abortion, and oh my goodness, and we need to change that, and you need to run for school board, and you need to do this. Yes, you can do all that. But this one is coming for a vote next week. Whatever happened, that's something that we're sending you on, and it cannot take 2 years. A lot of people think, oh, I vote, Brigitte. I attend meetings, and I'm informed, and I vote. You see, a lot of things happen between voting, between the 2 years, and that's why we need you engaged. By the way, how many people came here tonight because they received an email from Act for America that I'm going to be speaking here tonight? Can you please raise your hand? Okay. Oh, okay. You received it because you work here. Fantastic. Fantastic. Every single one of you should be signed up to get our emails and action alert and sharing them with your friends. You can have an Act for America chapter within your Turning Point Faith chapter, because we are the activism arm. We are the ones who notify you about important issues coming down for a vote where you need to have your voice heard. Right now, for example, Biden wants to forgive all student loans for everybody, basically handing out money we don't even have. We already have an action alert about that that's been signed by over 500,000 people, and we just sent it out 2 days ago. This is action. One important tip I want to share with you, as you saw on our action alerts, when we gave you the pictures of all your elected officials, we gave you the pictures of the Republicans as well as the Democrats. Here's the problem on our side. A lot of our people barely call the Republican Okay? Barely. Like, I don't feel comfortable calling them, but okay, I'll make a phone call. So they called their Republican elected official and they said, that's it. I'm not calling anybody else. Why am I even wasting my voice? It's not even going to matter. It's important to call both, and here is why. In Congress, as well probably as in your state level, the same thing. But in Congress, you have those on the right, and they have their heels dug so deep, they're not going to budge. You know exactly who they are: the Ted Cruz, the Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Lauren Boebert, the Scott Perry, those people. And you have the people on the left, the Chuck Schumer, the Dick Durbin, the Nancy Pelosi. You're not going to change their mind. But what we need to impact are all the ones in the middle, the ones that I call sincerely undecided. And what I mean by that is they lick their finger, stick it up in the air, and see how the wind is blowing and vote accordingly. So our job is to create the biggest windmill machine and direct it at those people. And the reason why you need to call your Democrat elected official is because you need to give them cover. In other words, if they hear from 8,000 constituents about an issue, they need to be able to go to Nancy Pelosi or to Chuck Schumer and say, hey, I heard from 8,000 people in my district this week about this bill. I can't vote for it. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my seat. Do you want me to lose my seat next November? Of course not. That's why I have to abstain. Or I have to vote just present. That's how you impact policy. And people ask me all the time, Brigitte, what is my voice going to count? My congressman needs to hear from 40 to 50,000 people before they take action on anything. I'm a nobody. I'm only one. Wrong. They tally every email and every phone call as a representative of 1,000 voters. One phone call or one email represent 1,000. Here is the reason behind the numbers. They believe if one person makes a phone call or writes an email, he or she are representing 1,000 couch potatoes who feel the same way but are too lazy to make a phone call or write an email, yet they vote on election day. That can make or break an election. So, it takes 40 people for your congressman or senator to hear from in their state to make an issue their top priority. 40. That's it. Because 40 people represent 40,000 voters. That can make or break an election. We have more than 40 people sitting in this audience right now. Know your power. If you start a chapter with 5 people, invite 5 friends next month, each one bring one more friend. One more, that's it. 10 people take action. That represents 10,000 voters. Can you imagine if the months after that, each one of the 20 brings one friend? One. I'm sure each one of you knows one person who cares about the country as much as you do and is as concerned about the country as you are. Do you see the power in numbers? That's what we do with Act for America. We teach you about your power to impact policy and take back our country. And I want to leave you with this thought. We are taking back our country. We are passing bills. We are making a difference. There is hope. We will win. We will win. We are taking back ground 1 inch at a time. I know you are in the middle of the storm in California and it's very hard for you to see. But it's very important for you to know that we are very encouraged watching what's happening around the country and how we are changing the laws and how people are coming together and how we are passing bills. 240 bills already passed. That's activism. So, one thing you need to do tonight, before you leave, or when you leave here, every single one of you need to go to actforamerica.org and sign up to get our emails. I named the organization Act for America. Not think about America, not hope for America, not pray for America, not wish for America, but what? Act for America. actforamerica.org. So number one, you're going to sign up to get our emails and action alerts. And by the way, while you're at it, take action as much as you want. We've got Act Now State, Act Now National. Check out all the campaigns that we have. You can even narrow it by state. California, you can narrow, take action on as many action alerts as you can and share them with your friends. Number two, start an Act for America chapter within your Turning Point USA chapter. So we can be the activism arm. Can you imagine the chapter leader standing up and saying, our chapter this month alone send 100,000 phone calls and emails to Congress through all the people, because we can track every person that makes a phone call, that sends an email, that signs a petition, whether or not they post on their Facebook, whether or not they have Twitter. So when you see the numbers that we showed you, they are all tracked electronically. So we know what we're talking about. And we can tell you how many people in your chapter or the impact that you had as a chapter on our national policy. So you can be encouraged, because people taking action and not feeling results get discouraged. We want to encourage you. We want you to understand and see what you are doing and the results that you are achieving. Oh, and I cannot end my presentation, and I promise this is the last thing I'm going to say. I cannot end my presentation without asking our veterans and our military personnel to please stand up and be recognized and remain standing after the applause. All our veterans and our military personnel, please stand up and be recognized. Our veterans and our military personnel, and please remain standing. They're so shy. They stand up and sit down so fast. Please remain standing. All of you, our military personnel and our veterans, remain standing. I have a message for you. Okay. I have a message for you. Please remain standing. Do not sit down. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for building a country for me where I can come and be all I can be as an American. I want to thank you for my freedom, because I know my freedom is built upon your shoulders and your sacrifice. I want to thank you on behalf of millions of people across the globe. You are not only my heroes, but you are the heroes of millions of Americans who are unable to stand on this holy ground before you, and thank you. On their behalf, I thank you. I thank you on behalf. I thank you on behalf of the millions of people God bless you. I'm not done. Everybody can sit down except for our military personnel and our veterans. You remain standing. I'm not done. I want to thank you on behalf of millions of people across the globe who wish they had a military like you, who would never have the opportunity to thank you for going around the world fighting for justice and spreading freedom. On their behalf, I thank you. And I vow to you that I am building an organization with Act for America that will always honor you, that will always lift you up in prayer, that will always sing about your sacrifices and what you have done for this country, that will tell our brats where their freedom comes from. May God bless you one and all. May God bless your families. May God bless your wives and your husbands who stood by you as you served this country. We can never say enough thank you, but we can try. Thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate you. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pastor, for hosting us at your church. I'm humbled to be here. Thank you so much. And thank you, Turning Point USA, for doing a great job.